everybody. It's been a while. Welcome to Closet Conversations. I'm currently in New Orleans, Louisiana with my friend Theresa Harris, Dr. Theresa Harris here, who has a chiropractic practice here in New Orleans. And we have been here having a great time this weekend because my spiritual mom, I don't know if you consider her your, yes, mentor and spiritual mom, just celebrated her 70th birthday, so we had a big surprise party for her. And if anybody deserves an elegant, classy, extravagant party, it is Dr. Kathy Baker, whom we owe so much of the health that we have received, help and health that we have received on our journeys to soul wellness, to her expertise in the field of psychology and the Word of God, because we have come to learn that psychology alone can only take you so far. But when you understand how God created us and you have an expert in that field and they also know the Word of God, there is nothing impossible to discover. It is the most... I have never been on such an exciting journey, even though it's been painful, very painful at times, you know. But before we get into everything and telling you the reason why I decided to do a Closet Conversations while we're here, before I get into that, I was trying to remember, like, when we first met. Like, how long have we known each other?
Gosh, probably at least maybe 15 years.
At least, because I know I've been got remarried almost 9 years ago, but I would come down here and we did the Women Wanting Wisdom.
Yes, and I think the first time I met you as you came and you did some worship at the church.
Yes, and I stayed with you. Yes, with another young lady, and that was such a powerful time.
Yes.
Okay, and she was, she was, I was quite impressed with you then, and I'm really impressed with you now. You just, I have been so blessed to be able to reconnect with you. You know, as you know, I got married, and, you know, when you're adjusting to the life of a blended family, and also trying to unlearn a lot of things that you had been living for 40 years that you realized were not right. God has you in seasons, and he had me in a long season of readjusting. She's a chiropractor, by the way. Did I tell you that? Readjusting. You know all about readjusting. But it's been such a blessing allowing me to come back and stay in your beautiful home. And we were talking last night. This is how this all came about. You know, we were just sitting here talking, and we ended up talking late into the night about each of our own personal stories. I had no idea, even though I've known you for at least 15 years, that you had gone through some similar things in your past that I went through. I had no idea. And Theresa, I as you were sharing, I'm just sitting here going, wow, like, to see you so successful in life and such a positive spiritual influence on so many women, such an example of a godly... I know that didn't just happen overnight, right? I mean, because when I learned what you'd been through, I was like, okay, she has really put in a lot of work.
Oh, absolutely. A
lot of work. I mean, if you want to start and just or share whatever's on your heart, I mean, I was just so blown away because I would have never thought that, because you are so strong. And I feel, when I asked you, I was like, I was hesitant to ask her, you know, because she is to be on the show, because this show is very vulnerable, very real. We don't skirt around the issues. We call things for what they are, and that's called truth telling. In case you didn't know, and I was just like, I was like, I've got to ask you if you would talk and share your story, because since I came out with what happened to me, which a few months ago, God has shown me how important this message, our stories, your story, my story, all of our stories are so powerful, but the enemy wants us to stay silent.
Absolutely.
Because our stories can help set other people free, or help them in some way, at least lead them in the right direction, maybe.
Yeah.
And so it has just blown me away since I came out with my story of sexual abuse, the amount of women that I know that have experienced that. And for so long, it was like, you can't talk about it. You just move on. You just go. And so when you told me your story, I so thank you for agreeing to be on the show. And I'm just going to turn it over to you now and let you, if I think of something, I might ask you a question just so that I can, I will feel it's important for the audience to know, because you just told me it last night, but I'm interested to hear it again, because it really blew my mind. So if you want to give a little background on like where you grew up and the kind of home you had.
One of the things is I grew up in a very strong Christian home. My parents were married almost 60 years before both of them had passed away.
Wow.
And the other thing is that kind of lends itself to the story is that I'm adopted.
I didn't know that. You didn't tell me that last night. Okay.
So
wow.
I'm adopted. I was adopted at 19 days old.
Oh my goodness.
And so,
wow.
So the only parents I've ever known is my adoptive parents.
Uh-huh.
And my brother also is adopted. He's 6.5 years younger than me. He is not biologically related to me through in a familial way, but he is my brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think of my parents as anything other than my parents.
Yes, that's amazing.
So
I love that.
I mean, I was, people say how blessed I am, how blessed they are to be able to have, adopted a child, but I feel like I'm the one that was blessed more.
Wow.
Because I couldn't have asked for better parents.
That's a beautiful thing. Wow.
And my parents have helped me through some of the things that I have been through. And
wow. I'm sure their faith, you were telling me last night about their solid faith, and like your mom just sounds like such an incredible human being, and I see where you got the incredible traits that you have. Wow. I mean, you are blessed, Theresa, to have had that.
Absolutely. I mean, my mom and my dad both. My dad taught Sunday school for years at our church. He loved to teach, and I think that's that's one of my giftings is teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I get my very practical side from my mom. My dad, he was an engineering type, and so he also was very practical, but yet he could be a little bit of a dreamer too. And he was fascinated with science, and I'm fascinated with science, and they were just special people. I mean, they taught me so much.
Anybody that adopts a child is a special person.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, Christian or non-Christian, it takes a very, but then for them to also be Christians, I mean, that's just amazing.
I mean,
wow.
When I see, I was also born with a birth defect, and my parents, I mean, they had no idea I had a birth defect. It was not something that was visible.
Uh-huh.
And so I ended up having a surgery at 1.5 years old that corrected the issue, but I was basically on my way to having to have a kidney transplant.
Wow.
Before they were able to figure out, and of course this was before CT scans, before MRIs were available and things like that. Yes. And so, they had to basically go in and do exploratory surgery.
Wow.
To see what the issue was. They suspected what it was, but
that was the only way for them to find out.
Yes, absolutely. And so, but my mom, my dad, both for a year and a half before this, would sit up with me at night because I would be in such pain and everything, to where, the only way I could go to sleep is with my dad having his hand on my back. And, he worked full time. My mom was an at-home mom. But, when your kid's crying all the time and you take them to doctors and, my mom said she had lost so much weight while I was sick during that time, and she said she had permanent bags under her eyes because of being
but that's
up.
what you do when you love. That's you just whatever it takes to see them have some relief. You'll do anything. You'll stay up all night every night. Like, your heart is literally breaking. As a mom, I know what that feels like. It's like, I've never had a child have a condition like that. I've had a child go off and be lost for several years and not know where she was. That was really, really hard. But as far as a physical illness like that I know day in and day out with the care that's needed to tend to that child, it is wears you down.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I am so thankful that my parents didn't say, "Oh, what have we done? We regret this," and they didn't. They never, ever, thought that. And
that's beautiful.
It's
what angels.
I know, I tell you. And what's so interesting is that if you were to see, most people forget I'm adopted because I look so much like my adopted father.
I know. Okay, so she doesn't know this, but I'm staying up in her guest room, and she has some pictures of her parents up there by the bed. And I literally picked them up a while ago to look at it because you've been talking so much about your beautiful parents that I wish I could have met. And so I wanted to look at them, and I thought, oh my goodness, the resemblance is there. That's so amazing.
Yeah. And, my parents were beautiful on the inside and out. And like I said, they were just such wonderful Christian people. I mean, we were there when the church doors opened. Sundays, Wednesday evenings. I was part of the youth group for all the years of having a youth group, and I grew up in a American Baptist Association, and so it was a very strict environment as far as rules of how you should live, your values, your morals,
and some might call that legalistic.
Yeah, to some degree.
To some degree, but for the most part, it's the love. It's because of the love of God that they had, that they didn't want to have association with certain things, because they understood that association with certain things in this world keep you from having a close relationship with God and Him blessing your life. Right?
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. So, my parents were teetotalers. They didn't drink. They didn't smoke. Well, my dad had smoked when he was younger, but he gave it up, and when he went in the Army, actually, he couldn't make it through boot camp, so he had to quit cold turkey.
Wow.
And my mom was very glad.
I'm sure. I hate the smell of cigarette smoke. It's so nasty.
She would say she'd go behind him, like dumping there all the little ashtrays and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, but it kind of actually surprised me that she even married somebody that smoked.
Yeah,
but,
for real.
So,
that would have been a nope.
So I thought, she must have really been infatuated with my dad from the very beginning. But, he was my dad was funny. He liked to joke. He liked to tease. He liked to play practical jokes. But it was all very lighthearted and fun. There was not a mean bone in my dad's body.
Oh,
and
that's foreign to me.
And
so, You know, there's people that, I just want to interject this.
No,
I just thought about this because there's people that had such a horrible father figure.
Yes.
That when God is represented to them, maybe for the first time, or maybe they kind of heard about it in church, maybe their parents drug them to church or their grandparents or whatever, but they never really developed, and then they get to a point in their life where they're like, okay, I want to try this God thing out, and they realize, okay, he's my what? My heavenly Father? Did you say Father? And immediately these walls go up because the way their natural mind, you know, they can only comprehend in this little mind that we have, and they can't wrap their mind around good Father, what I had growing up, and so there's an issue of trust right from the get-go. So for you, it was easier for you to view your Heavenly Father as a loving Heavenly Father because you had one in the natural, and you are blessed in that regard, because that's why it's so important for parents to be godly, because you're passing down blessings or curses.
Absolutely.
And so I see the blessing of the Lord all over your life, and hearing your story now and finding out the details and the backstory is like making sense to me, because I know you've been through a lot of hell, which you're going to talk about. But I would have never, ever imagined that you suffered like I did in some ways. And so you, this woman is super smart. I mean, like, her house has so many books, and she just told me like last night or something that's like this percentage of the amount of books that she's ever owned in her life, and she's got this incredible photographic memory. I mean, I'm blown away at the gift of intellect that God has given her capacity to not just understand but retain information. It is really beautiful to me, and I'm intrigued by it. But what makes you even more of an intriguing person is that you not only survived these events that we're going to talk about, but you overcame.
Yeah.
And you're still overcoming.
Oh, absolutely. It's an ongoing process. It's, just like our Christian life, we're actually not completed until we leave this life and enter into our next one.
Absolutely. Glory to glory, strength to strength.
Yes. So, but, one of the things that I've had to deal with in my life is, like we had referred to earlier, is sexual molestation as well as sexual assault. And, those can be one and the same, as well as they can be separate incidences. And with me, I was about 9 years old, and one of the neighbors became very friendly with me. And
how old was he?
Approximately 17 or so.
Okay. And you were 9?
Yes, and I was 9.
So he knew better.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, otherwise, why would you need it to be secretive?
Right.
That's...
What would he tell you? What were some of the things he would tell you?
He'd say, well, this is our little secret. We don't need to tell anybody else about this. And it's just, that's the way people talk when they're grooming someone. Mm-hmm. And it's also the way people talk when they know they're not doing something that's right.
Right. And there's somebody younger that's vulnerable that's going to believe what they're saying. Yes. So, I mean, of course you're going to say that because you do not want to be found out.
Yes.
Because you know what you're doing is wrong.
Yes, absolutely. And so this went on for approximately a few months during the summertime. And, it was... One day, he would invite me over, to his house, and there was like this little, kind of like a little playhouse kind of thing that he would invite me to come into. And
playhouse thing, like in the house.
no, like outside.
Outside. Okay.
Like how you have like a dollhouse kind of thing, playhouse outside.
Okay. All right.
And one day, my mom, we were sitting in her bedroom, and she said, "What is going on over there?" Or, why are you going over there all the time? And I just immediately thought, I'm in trouble. I'm doing something wrong. Not realizing that I was really doing anything wrong.
Right, because you were 9 years old.
Yes. And so I thought, okay, well, so I immediately thought, I can't ever say anything about this because then I'll get in trouble.
Right.
And that's how Satan does. He seals your lips up so
and
that you will not.
Fills you with guilt.
Yes. I immediately felt guilty, even though I was not the perpetrator.
Right.
I was the victim.
Right.
But I immediately thought, okay, well, I just can't talk about this. Is it, like he said, this is a secret, so I can't divulge any information. So I just told Mom nothing, and from then on, I started avoiding him. And he'd ask, well, why wasn't I coming by, or this or that? And I was like, I'd just be like, I'm not coming over there, And so, but then I lived with this for years until.
I know that feeling.
Until, eventually there was other things that it happened in my life that then forced me to confront not only another incident, but the one that was younger. And I did eventually tell two of my really closest family members that were also cousins, that were also my closest friends. And they were my age. So it wasn't like I was telling an adult or anything like that.
Right.
I was just confiding to someone that was my age, that, like, you had to get it out of you somewhere.
It will come out.
Yes.
One way or the other. And this is why I am so adamant about talking about this issue, because it almost destroyed me. I was on the verge, if not in the beginning phases of a mental breakdown last year.
Yes.
And I've gone through some intense therapy and continue to go. So I will be doing therapy for a long time, well, for the rest of my life, which is, once you get in the pattern of learning how therapy works, you can do it for yourself. But I'm not even there yet. Like, I am still, like, processing everything because of so many years of suppressing it. We were forbidden to talk about it. We had to forgive and forget.
Yes.
And it almost broke me.
Yes.
And so we have this mental health epidemic in our country.
Yes.
And, any intelligent person that studies psychology understands that the emotions not properly being processed are causing people to go out of their minds, and then they freaking shoot up schools, or, this is the real issue in our nation and in our world right now. And if we do not wake up, okay, listen, yes, God is the answer. That's what we believe. Yes, Jesus is here to set us free. But that is not all there is. There is work on our end to be done in our souls, and that's where therapy comes in. And that's where dealing with your emotions, learning, why do I feel this way? Why am I acting out this way? Why am I so angry, Theresa? For the last 8.5, forever I've been angry. You can ask my first husband. I would just blow off the hanger, blow off whatever I was trying to say, the handle, sorry. And right after leading worship. And he'd be like, I don't understand how you can be all spiritual and then come home and be so angry. we were not allowed to go to therapy.
No.
And all of us were deficient of one of the most important ingredient, which is He restores my soul from Psalm 23, okay? And going through that process so that He can restore it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you, thankfully, how old were you when you told these friends about that?
I was probably a teenager.
Okay, good. So it wasn't long time or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I was probably a teenager, and the thing about it is, I still, one of the things that it took my innocence away.
Yes, exactly.
And from that point on, I was so focused on
It rose something in you that should have been, what do they say, lit a candle or fire that wasn't supposed to, it was pre-lit. It was like, not time.
Yes, absolutely. And so, I mean, it also then too, sometimes it awakens things in you that shouldn't even be awakened at that time.
Right, that's what I meant, exactly.
And
that's the devil, man. Doesn't mean he wants to get outside of God's order of things, right?
Yes. And so, there was things that I would like look at trying to figure out what, why did he do that to me?
Yeah.
And
it makes your identity, all of a sudden, it goes into default mode.
Yes. And, I also then I was always very much a person who was driven by knowledge and education.
Mm-hmm.
But it went into overdrive at that point.
Music was mine. Mm-hmm. I get it.
Because I thought, okay, well, obviously I can't trust anybody. I'm going to have to do things for myself. It took a whole different spin as I grew up on what men were in your life. And even though I had such a loving father, and even it still was, but it also turned how I looked at God.
Mm-hmm.
Because I started to see God as being a wrathful God.
Really?
More so than being a God of love.
Really? That's interesting.
Because of my guilt that I had,
Wow.
false guilt.
False guilt for sure.
About what I felt like I had done something wrong.
Right.
But I started seeing God as a punishing God.
Okay.
And that, I was being punished because I did something, even though I didn't do anything wrong, because it was twisted.
Right.
Into me thinking I had done something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Then it became, you're guilty, so now God's going to punish you.
Wow.
For what you did.
Oh, wow.
And, because I felt like it needed to it should stay a secret, because, when you feel guilty about something, if you don't confess it, then guess what? It just festers in there.
Oh, for sure. That's why the word says confession brings forth healing. It's good for the soul. And, and it brings, confess your sins to one another and you'll be healed, I think is the scripture, right?
Yes, absolutely. And so, I went on through my teen years and everything, and, again, it was all fast forward, education, and I went on to college, and I didn't really mention this last night, but I really didn't date in high school because, again, I didn't trust, I didn't trust men. And so, I trusted my dad, but I didn't, and I trusted my family members.
Right,
but
that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I went and I went to college, and I started meeting.
It's okay.
I started meeting, different people, and I had a friend of mine. She'd introduced me to this guy, and we ended up starting to go out. And I had known them for a couple of years. He and this other guy that was his roommate,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd known them for a couple of years, and So one day he asked me to go out. So we started going out and everything, and all of a sudden we got engaged. He had moved to Jackson, Mississippi, and we had gotten engaged, and I had gone up there one weekend. Next weekend I went up there, and he decides to tell me that he can't marry me.
What?
And I was like, okay. I was like, he's like, I can't marry you because I'm gay. And I'm like, I mean, I was devastated.
Oh,
The
God.
first person I'd ever trusted
Oh, God. Oh, man.
to really go out with and become vulnerable to.
Yes. Oh, so then your defenses went way up.
Yes.
Oh, my word.
And I was just like, so, like I said, I was 21. I was going through my student teaching at the time. I mean, it was a, crucial moment.
Yeah.
I was going to be graduating
Yeah.
in May. This was like in February, March, and I thought, gosh. So needless to say, I went on for a long time after that. Didn't date anybody.
Yeah.
Again, refocused on my education. I was very fortunate to have some really good friends. And again, I graduated. I went and actually taught school for a year. Then I went back into a master's program. And during that time period, I decided to go. Some friends of mine and I went out one night, and we ended up going to again, this goes back to that guilt that you have about when you do something that you think is kind of iffy, or maybe it's not exactly maybe where you should be, right place, right time, or and we had gone to this little place. It was like a little restaurant, but it had like a little bar in it, and we just sat down and we had eaten, and then we sat down and we had a drink. Well, these people were at the bar with us, these guys, and we started talking, and I realized afterwards that I had gone to the bathroom and come back, and they were like, my friends were like, they invited us to come back to like a fraternity party. I was like, okay. So we drove over separately, and it really ended up just kind of being more at their house. But there was, party going on and everything. And so I started noticing that I was real sleepy all of a sudden. I thought, okay, well, maybe I'm just more tired than I thought I was, I'd only had one little drink, so it shouldn't have affected me that much, but I thought, well, maybe I'm just really tired. And so I went to go,
Lay down.
I told them, I said, I'm going to go, told my friends, I said, I'm going to go back here and find a place to lay down. I said, y'all just come get me when y'all are ready to go. And so they were like, okay. And so they were, busy, talking and everything. And so I went back there, and I don't know how long I had laid down or whatever, but all of a sudden I realized the door opened, and there was 3 people that came in. And I realized the door was closed, and then all of a sudden I was assaulted by 3 different people.
Wow.
And
Oh, my goodness.
I couldn't believe that was happening.
Oh, my gosh. I can't imagine.
And
I can't.
I was like, when it was over, I laid there for a little while,
Jesus.
and I thought, okay, I'm going to try to get up and go to the bathroom. And so I made it across the hallway to the bathroom, and I sat there and I basically puked my guts up on the in the commode.
I know the feeling.
And when I did, I just I told myself, if you can get up off this floor, you're going to get up, do whatever else you have to do to finish your education here, and then you're going to leave this place.
Wow.
And, you know, at that time, and probably even still now, I don't think women feel like they have a voice
Nope.
in court.
No, they
You know?
don't. Because, and one reason, it's still so very much male dominated. I don't care what anybody says.
Yes.
There is so much perversion in our government, in our all of the institutions,
Yes.
all of the corporations. It's gone rampant, and money talks.
Yes.
I mean, this stuff you see in the movies, it's
Yes.
real. That's why they make movies, because,
Yes,
and that's why
absolutely.
people watch the movies, because they literally live through these things, okay? And so, yes, women don't have a voice in that regard, and women also don't have a voice in the regard that they don't feel like anybody's really listening. Like, because it's become so common.
Yes. Yes.
It's become so common that people think it's not really that big of a deal. It's a huge deal.
Yes.
It is the reason, one of the biggest reasons on both male and female sides, that people are crazy today.
Yeah.
And because everybody thinks it's not that big of a deal. And it is a huge deal. And so I'm doing these videos because we have got to start telling our stories.
Yep.
Because when we tell our stories, light goes forth into the darkness and confuses the darkness. And then people are like, wait, okay, what happens? When you go into a dark room, you can't see anything. So your mind is so confused. I mean, you get turned around.
Yep.
You don't know where anything is, right? But if there's just one little glimmer of light, it can shine light to your path, and you can make your way around to the other side of the room. And so I see every story that is told on my platform, on my friend's platform, on my other friend's platform, and all the platforms, all the people that are finally starting to wake up and they're raising their voices. It's going to shine so brightly, Theresa, that people are going to have to stop and say, oh,
Absolutely.
because the spirit of the age, whether you like to hear me talk about the spirit realm or not, that's not my problem. It's a very real aspect, and the strongest aspect of this whole thing. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. You can't see wind, but you can see the effects of the wind.
Yes.
Well, we're seeing the effects of the darkness. We're seeing the effects of women and men, but mostly women, being silenced.
Yes.
And because we've been silenced, the darkness has prevailed.
Yes.
But as we all get the courage to stand up on a small platform, big platform, I don't care if it's just one person, your therapist or spouse, or I don't care, just tell your story, then guess what? Whoever you're telling your story to, they're going to have a wake-up moment. It's going to make them become aware. So that, and maybe if you tell them early enough, they can preserve their daughters from getting molested.
Yeah.
I have a daughter that was molested. I was molested. She was molested. I'm pretty sure most of you watching this, hence the title of the, Closet Conversations, there's something attracted you to this. And I mean, and you know what? You're sitting here telling me how you just dove into your education and you became tell them the degrees that you have, please, for me. I want to make a point.
I have a double undergraduate of English and biology. Then I have a master's degree in cardiac physiology. And then I went on to do my PhD in exercise physiology and biomechanics. And then I also have my chiropractic degree.
Wow.
So I have a doctor of chiropractic. And then I also have postgraduate education from that.
Wow.
Sports
That's
medicine.
incredible.
And everything. So.
And you're still fairly young. I mean, you know, you have this list of credentials that some, you know, 60 and 70-year-olds that have been studying their whole life don't even have yet. And it just amazes me. But my point in bringing that up, and I'm definitely not trying to toot my horn in music or anything like that, but I did focus so much of my energy. I didn't have a problem practicing 8 hours a day in classical piano because it was my escape.
Yeah, that's how it was for me with my education. That was my means of escape. I mean, I was an avid reader to begin with, even before being molested at 9, but I was even probably I lost myself in books after that. You know, I became those characters in those books because I didn't have to face what I was dealing with
Exactly.
in my life.
Yes, that's the
in
false
real
reality.
life,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and
Oh yeah, it makes so much sense. That's why a lot of kids get in. I mean, sports. They'll either dive into sports or theater. The theater is a big one. There's a lot of hurt young people in theater, and that is a way for them to become someone else, and they become alive on stage.
Yes.
They become alive on stage because they aren't themselves.
Yep.
They know that they've got this whole audience and they are playing the character so well, and I've known several actors that were so good on stage, on film, and I happen to know that they were sexually abused as a child, and I don't care what it is, you're gonna find some might go to drugs.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I did my education, but I was very involved in sports. You know, I played softball for 20 years.
Wow, I didn't know
pitch
that.
softball.
Wow. What position did you play?
I played catcher, first base, and outfield.
That's impressive. Catcher. Catchers amaze me. To me, obviously the pitcher and the catcher, you know, have the most action in the game, but that catcher has, to be squatted down like that for so long, because I used to play some sports. I was never really good at softball and baseball. I played co-ed softball. Yes, I did. And don't laugh. All y'all that know me from back in the day, I know. Y'all probably were laughing your heads off, and I thought I was so cool. But anyway, that was not my sport. But I just thought, you know, my son being a baseball player, and my husband being a baseball player, and now my next little boy being a baseball player, I've watched a lot of baseball games, okay? And I sat behind that plate, and those boys just up and down, and having to be so quick, and oh my word. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off on that, but I find everything so interesting, you know, and people just miss out on so much in life because they're not paying attention, or because they're so overwhelmed by their emotions, like I was for so long. I could not enjoy life. I could not enjoy the simple things of life because it was eating away at me, and it dulled my senses. It literally dulled my hearing, my sight, my everything, how I took in nature, everything.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, I've had the same type of experience. And I also was a musician.
Wow.
I played clarinet and bass clarinet.
I did not know that. I'm learning new things. She's amazing. Oh my God.
And I was really good at it. And it was interesting how I diversified I was involved in so many different things.
Yeah.
I was involved, I played in the symphony.
Wow.
So, I was all state, I was all district,
Wow.
I was architect.
Doesn't surprise me. You were driven.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You were driven.
I was.
Determined.
You know, and it also, though, it distracted me
from facing your emotions.
Yeah.
What you were
facing
feeling.
what I was feeling.
And
what I was dealing with, you know, from a mental and emotional standpoint.
You will do anything
to cover it up.
You will fake anything. You will pretend to be somebody that you're not. You will do things that you don't even want to do.
Yep. Absolutely.
Anything not to face what really happened.
Not to feel.
Yeah, not to feel. I mean, because you were violated. And you said it earlier. You stole your innocence. You were violated. Your identity was literally like someone came with a sword and just stuck you right in the middle.
Yep.
And you can't even breathe. Like, that's what happened, Dad.
Yep.
If you're watching this, that's what happened to me at 15. You know. And he tells my mom, you know, it wasn't that big of a deal. He molested me for a year at the age of 15, the same age that you made me worship leader, and he was the bass player. Imagine what I felt every Sunday getting up. I mean, and my mom had no idea. So we find this out. She finds out what really happens. I find out she didn't know. And all these years, we've believed a lie about, you know, that's how damaging sweeping an incident under the rug and saying just forgive and forget is.
Yep.
And I could go on, but this is about you. So.
No,
as you can see, I'm very, very passionate about this because it could have destroyed me. It's destroying several of my siblings.
Yep.
It breaks my heart to no end to know that they are not getting the help that they need and they deserve because they're amazing human beings. My siblings, I cannot praise each and every one of them enough for just the incredible, beautiful human being that they are. And talented, each one of them. And we went through so much, Theresa.
Oh, I can.
We went through so much. And three of us are sane. I mean, four of us, 3.5 of us. But 3 of us left there and pursued God and did not hold what we had gone through against God, knew that representation of God was false, and so we sought him and found him. So that's our story. But I have other siblings who were so broken and so abused and so not listened to and so manipulated and made to beat into submission, beat into obedience when they were crying out to be heard. If parents do not listen to their children, you will damage them for the rest of their lives. And but here, you know, the thing about my story is that you had amazing parents.
Oh, absolutely.
And while you were fearful to tell them, which is understandable, and you had a healthy, proper fear of your parents, if you will, that I believe is missing in our society a lot today because parents just want to be their friends, you know, their kids' friends. And so then, therefore, familiarity breeds contempt.
Yeah.
And so there should be that healthy, you know, reverence for your parents. But at the same time, from what you have told me, I know that had you have gone to them, they would have listened to you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I could tell that my mom was concerned when she asked me that question. About what was going on.
She suspected. So moms always know.
Yes.
Yeah.
But because you know, she didn't necessarily pursue it anymore after I said, oh, no, everything's fine, you know. And then I stopped going over there, so she
must have.
She probably just
you think?
assumed that, okay, well, you know, whatever was going on, or you know, whatever was happening.
Maybe she was overthinking it, and you know, so I get that. I got kids.
And so, you know, I've never, you know, I know my parents, had I spoke up and said something, they would have immediately addressed the situation.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And
that's amazing. When you had the opposite,
yeah,
it's just like, wow, you were so blessed to have the parents that you had, because so many of us, my mom was broken from her own sexual abuse.
yeah.
And she didn't properly deal with any of that. Oh, she didn't know how. I mean, that back then they didn't, counseling and therapy was not, I mean, that was just not, especially in the Christian world, it was like, no, it was crazy. Still to today, there's a lot of Christian circles that think it's secular and it's worldly and it's not of God. I'm sorry, did he not create spirit, soul, and body? And that's just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Anyway.
Well, my mom, she was always like, if you need to talk to the pastor, you need to, if my parents believed in getting help for their children.
Yes.
And
praise God.
Yeah.
More parents need to be like that.
I tell you, they would have either, made sure I had counseling. They would have made, in fact, after I went through this gang rape, once, statistically, once you've been molested as a child, I think something like 7 or 8 times more likely to be sexually assaulted as an adult.
Wow.
Yeah.
That explains a lot.
Yeah. And so.
Wow.
Because you then either sometimes, not that you're intentionally putting yourself into harm's way, but people can sense it. They can pick up on it. I mean, if you got somebody...
It's kind of like a cult leader with vulnerable young people that are looking for their identity.
Yes, exactly. I mean, because, a person, if they're going to prey on someone, they can sense who their prey is.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. They know if they throw a bone out there, that person's going for it, and they can take one look at another girl. Oh no, she's got boundaries in place. Yep. She's healthy.
Yep, exactly. And after I left where I had finished my master's degree and went on to work on my PhD, and I moved to another city. And during that time, I continued my education, but I also started drinking a little bit more socially, not like by myself, or it was more of a social experience. Mm-hmm. But I mean, things where I'd go and I'd get drunk and I would, but that was just to cover up the emptiness that was in there, and the feelings that were there, and
absolutely,
and then one day I went on a trip and met this man and thought, oh, he kind of seemed to really get me and understand me, and for the first time I was able to tell someone what had happened to me.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, this is great. He really understands me, and he's not saying, oh, well, gosh, how stupid are you to have been in that situation, or you're damaged, I don't want you. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up eloping and getting married.
Huh. Okay.
Like 2 months after knowing each other.
Oh, that sounds so familiar.
And because you think that person's going to help fill that void that's there.
Yep.
And even though I knew the Lord, and I had spent years learning about God and who God was, and really starting to finally experience God as not just a wrathful God, but a God of love and of mercy and of grace.
So you did pursue him while you were in college?
Yeah.
Okay, that's beautiful. Okay.
Yeah. So through high school, I was involved with my youth group.
Okay.
And
so you never.
And I had
these things never made you push God out of the picture.
No.
Okay.
And
that's interesting. That you have to give your parents credit for that.
oh, absolutely. I mean, my parents instilled in me.
That's a foundation right there.
The foundation there, and then I had a great youth group leader. I had a great pastor, you know, and then, you know, once I went off to school to do my PhD work, you know, that's when I really kind of got lost. And once I got married, I went on my honeymoon, and you know, we had not had sex until we went on our honeymoon. And
that's a shock. That was a shocker too when you told me that last night. I was like, wow, okay.
But once we had sex, it's like it just totally upended the apple cart for me emotionally. You know, I thought I was ready to handle all of that. And I was not ready to handle all that. And it just brought back all the emotions. It brought back all the things I had not dealt with. And we're talking about not just from the past year, but from the past 15 years.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And so I was like, okay, when I got back off my honeymoon, as it was, my then husband, after I'd gotten married, had stayed behind because he was still in the military, and he was supposed to be getting out within the next month or so. So I went back to where I was living, and the next day after I'd gotten back, I went to a conference meeting with, you know, some other staff members where I was doing some work, and I realized I was sitting there at the conference table, and all of a sudden I just imagined myself standing up on the table and started dancing with all these people standing around.
That is not Theresa, okay?
No. And I was sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, you are having a nervous breakdown.
Yep.
You would never get up and, especially without having been plied with alcohol, we'd never get up there and do anything like that from a practical standpoint.
Right,
you know?
right.
I'm like
that's just the personality that she has. Like, that is not anywhere on the spectrum of her life.
And I was like, I sat there and I thought, okay, Theresa, you have got to get a hold of yourself. Okay, stop imagining yourself on that table dancing.
Wow.
And you need to get home.
You better get on out of there.
Yes, you need to get home, finish this meeting, get home, and you need to go and call your mom.
Wow.
And that's exactly what I did. God gave me the grace to get up out of that chair, get to my house, and call my mom. And I just started vomiting all of this stuff that had happened to me.
Ooh.
And can you imagine a mother who is hearing all of this? First, that I had eloped and gotten married.
Oh my goodness.
That I was basically having a nervous breakdown because I had been gang raped the year before. That I had then before that been molested, and her statement was, well, Theresa, it all makes sense now about some of your behavior. And not that I was a bad kid or anything.
Right, but maybe some questionable things in her mind, like, that didn't make sense.
Just some things of why I didn't really date in high school, why I didn't, why I was so driven with things that, she was like, things make more sense to me now.
Yeah, they make a lot more sense to me too, because, I've told my story and I'll keep telling it because, it's my story and I'm going to tell it.
Yeah.
But, I remember there being a season of my life where I would do things that I knew were wrong. I didn't even want to be doing them.
Yeah.
But I couldn't stop doing them because I was freaking broken.
Yeah.
And no one would allow me to get the therapy that I needed because they didn't think it was important. And I'm not talking about my husband, I'm talking about the person that I let control my life for 40 years. And I was a very submissive person. And I think that when you're raised in the kind of environment that I was raised in, you don't say no to men.
Yeah.
I was groomed to never say no to especially a male figure that's telling you to do something.
Yes.
I mean, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. I'm not just talking out of my butt. Like, this is in a lot of Christian homes still today. Yeah. And it's sickening. And that's why a lot of people don't want to have anything to do with church. They don't want to have anything to do with God, because there's so much hypocrisy and so much ugliness. Yeah. Like, God did not create woman to be under a man.
No. No.
No, he didn't. Just because the Bible says women submit to your husband, that means it's a posture of your heart. Yes. That you love and you respect God so much, and that for giving you this, a wonderful partner in life, that, it's a thing that women have to work on, because we can be very prideful. So I think that God did that because he wanted to keep us, humble, yeah. Because a lot of times we are smarter than guys, and I'm because we're very complex creatures, yeah. So we have to multitask. I don't mean that we're like more intelligent. I just think that our capacity to spread in multiple directions at one time, like a spider, yeah. It's remarkable. And I think sometimes men, they're intimidated by that, so they have to they exert.
And they don't understand
They don't understand it. They don't give us grace. They think that we're trying to demasculate or emasculate,
yes.
them, but that we were actually created to be able to be their helpmate. So we have to.
Their helper.
Their helper. So like, there's a lot that makes up life, and if they're men have always been like the main breadwinner, for so long, which is obviously changing every day, more and more every day. Thank God. Because women are free to do what, not everybody's called to be a homemaker. Not every woman is called to be married. Not every woman is called to, have children. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing, this thing in life that we live, and God delights in each one of us. Yeah. Just as much as the other, no matter how he delights in how he created us. And so I love that women in many aspects the grounds have opened up for them, yes. to become more equal, yes. in society. But in this arena that we're talking about tonight, it is like the underlying foundational thing that is going to erupt and blow out all these other positions that women have had. They're great and everything, but if they don't deal with what we're talking about tonight, which a lot of women, I have noticed, have you noticed this, that like men and women, like, if you find out that, they had this happen to them in their past, and they're really, 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 really successful and good at what they do. I mean, isn't that interesting to you? Like, I've found out that the majority of the people I know that experienced traumatic sexual experiences excelled they were very good at something, whether it was acting, and I think we talked about that again, but that's so fascinating to me. It's like, you better watch out for those ones that put on a good show.
Yeah.
Or that seem to are very, very successful because something drove them to be that. And many times it's hurt. It's usually hurt. I mean, do y'all understand that? Like, it's not always, the blessing of the Lord, I've got families, generational blessings, and that makes me so good. No, most of the time, if you read the lives, we were talking about this, hymn writers. Yeah. The hymns that those writers wrote were so powerful because of the hurt and the pain. Yep. C.S. Lewis talks about this. Yep. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
this has got to be addressed. We've just got to start. We don't have to be quiet. It's
Yes.
okay to tell your story. It's
Yes.
okay to talk about this, and it's okay
Yes.
to go get therapy.
Yes.
Please, I am begging you. This is the whole reason why I'm doing this show. And all the ones to come is because it has changed my life. It has brought healing to me. It's allowed me to see who I really was created to be, and who I am free to be. The abuse blinded me from being able to see who God created me to be. And even if I saw that, I didn't believe I could ever be that.
And the thing about it I found with myself is that I felt like that even as much as I succeeded,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I was still couldn't reach my full potential.
Yeah.
Because of the guilt that I had, and just
it was a burden in your soul that was like
Yeah.
what are those like weights?
Yeah.
Those big cannonball weights or something. I just think of like a boat thing that
like an anchor.
Yeah, an anchor, and it was like literally keeping you down.
Like a drag. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's like, what would I have done had I not had that weight on me? What my
Yeah. No kidding. No kidding.
But then I think too,
maybe I wouldn't have stayed in the cult for 40 years.
and
Keep going. Sorry, I'm just thinking
Yeah.
out loud.
And-
I'm still processing everything.
yeah, but when I when I told my mom all that I told her, her first thing was, you need to call the Rape Crisis Center in the morning
Amazing.
and get counseling.
Thank you, God, for that woman.
And I tell you, and she said, and I'm going to have your brother drive me down to Baton Rouge tonight.
Mm.
And so I was able to sleep that night. And I got up the next morning. I called. I got an appointment. They were able to get me in that day.
Wow.
And I saw the sweetest woman that became my counselor for the next 12 weeks while I finished out in Baton Rouge. And I tell you, she opened my eyes and to how big of a problem it was. And we're talking,
Mm-hmm.
1994, 95.
Wow. Wow. Now, that's before it got really popular, like it is today.
And I mean, definitely, I was given a date rape drug.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, been there too.
And so,
Jeez. God, I just can't imagine what you went through. I literally, it's a miracle. This woman is sane, but
Yeah.
the only reason why she is because of going to therapy. So, that was your first time going to therapy. Well,
Yeah.
and then that's when you started seeing, you were saying, this is huge. This is what I need right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And and then from there, she gave me several resources that I could use. And certainly I did not suddenly become this perfect person in any way, or completely whole person in any way.
It doesn't work like that.
Or completely healed person in any way.
Nope.
I mean, I went from being really broken to just maybe a little bit less broken.
Right, exactly.
And then, as I progressed through my life, I ended up going to chiropractic school and was in a couple of different relationships that, didn't work out. And, interestingly enough, I seem to date not every single person, but at least, some people, have cheated and things like that. And it's like you wonder, okay, is that self-sabotage, in a relationship, things like that. And, you really kind of start to overthink things, but then, I found another person who was a really good counselor, and so I started seeing her. You know, once I had moved to New Orleans, and you know, since that first counseling session, I realized that hey, this is a lifelong journey.
Yep.
This is not something that I'm just gonna be over, because that's what I thought I was doing by pushing it under the rug.
Exactly, and that's what so many Christians say. Well, that's what God wants you to do, honey. No, it isn't. Please.
No, I mean, I realized at that moment that all that trying to forget about it and pretend it never happened, and you, that's in your soul.
It's in your soul. It's in your DNA.
And it's in your spirit, too.
Yes.
And there's no way that until you start to work through the issues that have happened because of the incidents that happened, the sexual assault, the molestation, until you start working through what happened and get to the roots of those issues. Because sometimes there's issues there before and can be the reason you became a victim to start with.
Yes, exactly.
And you start to realize, you know, and that's when I also, after I had my, basically like my second counselor I went to, she moved off to another state, and I went for a while, and thought I was good, but you realize there's things going on in your life that, hey, Theresa, you are not good. Yeah, I mean, not that I wasn't good in doing things that were good, but I was not good emotionally.
Inside, yeah.
Inside,
yeah.
there were still things that needed to be.
You were unstable. Like, it was like, you felt like, for me, maybe you felt like
it was a powder
this way.
keg.
Exactly.
There was still a powder keg in
yeah,
there.
for sure. For sure. Wow.